Dukhi and the Maharani, a story by Ruskin Bond. We lived in an old palace beside a lake. The palace looked like a ruin from the outside, but the rooms were cool and comfortable. We lived in one wing, and my father organized a small school in another wing. His pupils were the children of the Raja and the Raja's relatives. My father had started life in India as a tea planter, but he had been trained as a teacher, and the idea of starting a school in a small state facing the Arabian Sea had appealed to him. The pay wasn't much, but we had a palace to live in, the latest 1938 model Hillman to drive about in, and a number of servants. In those days, of course, everyone had servants, although the servants did not have any. I was our own, but the cook, the bearer, the gardener, and the bhishti were all the provided by the state. Sometimes I sat in the schoolroom with the other children, who were all much bigger than me. Sometimes I remained in the house with Aya. Sometimes I followed the gardener Dukhi about the spacious garden. Dukhi means sad, and though I never could discover if the gardener had always and anything to feel sad about, the name certainly suited him. He had grown to resemble the drooping weeds that he was always digging up with a tiny spade. I seldom saw him standing up. He always sat on the ground with his knees well up on his chin and attacked the weeds from his position. He could spend all day on his haunches, moving about the garden simply by shuffling his feet along the grass. I tried to imitate his posture, sitting down on my heels and putting up knees into my armpits, but could never hold the position for more than 5 minutes. Time had no meaning in a large garden, and Dukhi never hurried. Life for him was not a matter of one year succeeding another, but of 5 seasons: winter, spring, hot weather, monsoons, and autumn, arriving and departing. His seed beds had always to be in readiness for the coming season, and he did not look any further than the next monsoon. It was impossible to tell his age. He may have been 36 or 86. He was either very young for his years or very old for them. Dukhi loved bright colors, especially red and yellows. He liked strongly scented flowers, like jasmine and honeysuckle. He couldn't understand my father's preference for the more delicately perfumed petunias and sweet peas. But I shared Dukhi's fondness for the common bright orange marigold, which is offered in temples and is used to make garlands and nosegays. When the garden was bare of all color, the marigold would still be there, gay and flashy, challenging the sun. Dukhi was very fond of making nosegays, and I liked to watch him at work. A sunflower formed the centerpiece. It was surrounded by roses, marigolds, and oleander, fringed with green leaves and bound together with silver thread. The perfume was overpowering. The nosegays were presented to me or my father on special occasions, that is, on a birthday, or to guests of my father's who were considered important. One day I found Dukhi making a nosegay and said, "No one is coming today, Dukhi. It isn't a birthday." "It is a birthday, Chota Sahib," he said. Little Sahib was the title he had given me. It wasn't much of a title compared to Raja Sahib, Diwan Sahib, or Bara Sahib, but it was nice to have a title at the age of 7. "Oh," I said, "and is there a party too?" "No party." "What's the use of a birthday without a party? What's the use of a birthday without presents?" "This person doesn't like presents, just flowers." "Who is it?" I asked, full of curiosity. "If you want to find out, you can take these flowers to her. She lives right at the top of that far side of the palace. There are 22 steps to climb. Remember that, Chota Sahib. You take 23 steps and you will go over the edge and into the lake." I started climbing the stairs. It was a spiral staircase of wrought iron, and it went round and up, and it made me quite dizzy and tired. At the top, I found myself on a small balcony, which looked out over the lake and another palace at the crowded city and the distant harbor. I heard a voice, a rather high, musical voice, saying in English, "Are you a ghost?" I turned to see who had spoken, but found the balcony empty. The voice had come from a dark room. I turned to the stairway, ready to flee, but the voice said, "Oh, don't go. There's nothing to be frightened of." And so I stood still, peering cautiously into the darkness of the room. "First tell me, are you a ghost?" "I'm a boy," I said. "And I'm a girl. We can be friends. I can't come out there, so you had to better come in. Come along. I'm not a ghost either. Not yet, anyway." As there was nothing very frightening about the voice, I stepped into the room. It was dark inside, and coming in from the glare, it took me some time to make out the tiny elderly lady seated on the cushioned gilt chair. She wore a red sari, lots of colored bangles on her wrists, and golden earrings. Her hair was streaked with white, but her skin was still quite smooth and unlined, and she had large and very beautiful eyes. "You must be Master Pond," she said. "Do you know who am I?" "You are a lady with a birthday," I said. "But that's all I know. Duki didn't tell me any more." "If you promise to keep it a secret, I'll tell you who I am. You see, everyone thinks I'm mad." "Do you think so too?" "I don't know." "Well, you must tell me if you think so," she said with a chuckle. Her laugh was the sort of sound made by the geeku, a little owl lizard coming from the deep down in the throat. "I have a feeling you are a truthful boy. Do you find it very difficult to tell the truth?" "Sometimes." "Sometimes?" "Of course, there are times when I tell lies, lots of little lies, because they are such fun. But would you call me a liar?" "I wouldn't if I were you. But would you? Are you a liar?" "I'm asking you. If I were to tell you that I was a queen, that I am a queen, would you believe me?" I thought deeply about this and then said, "I'll try to believe you." "Oh, but you must believe me. I am a real queen. I am a Rani. Look, I have got diamonds to prove it." And she held out her hands, and there was a ring on each finger, the stones glowing and glittering in the dim light. Diamonds, rubies, pearls, emeralds. Only a queen can have these. She was most anxious that I should believe her. "You must be a queen," I said. "Right," she snapped. "In that case, would you mind calling me Your Highness?" "Your Highness?" I said. She smiled. It was a slow, beautiful smile. Her whole face lit up. "I could love you," she said, "but better still, I'll give you something to eat. Do you like chocolates?" "Yes, Your Highness." "Well," she said, taking a box from the table beside her, "these have come all the way from England. Take two. Only two, mind. Otherwise, the box will finish before Thursday, and I don't want that to happen because I won't get any more till Saturday. That's when Captain Macquarie's ship gets in, the SS Lucy, loaded with boxes and boxes of chocolates." "All for you?" I asked in considerable awe. "Yes, of course. They have to last at least 3 months. I get them from England. I get only the best chocolates. I like them with pink, crunchy fillings. Don't you?" "Oh, yes," I exclaimed, full of envy. "Never mind," she said. "I may give you one now and then, if you are very nice to me. Here you are. Help yourself." She pushed the chocolate box towards me. I took a silver wrapped chocolate, and then, just as I was thinking of taking a second, she quickly took the box away. "No more," she said. "They have to last till Saturday." "But I took only one," I said, and with some indignation. "Did you?" She gave me a sharp look, decided I was telling the truth, and said graciously, "Well, in that case, you can have another." Watching the Rani carefully in case she snatched the box away again, I selected a second chocolate, this one with a green wrapper. I don't remember what kind of day it was outside, but I remember the bright green of the chocolate wrapper. I thought it would be rude to eat the chocolates in front of a queen, so I put them in my pocket and said, "I would better go now. Aya will be looking for me." "And when will you be coming to see me again?" "I don't know," I said. "Your Highness, Your Highness, there is something I want you to do for me," she said, placing one finger on my shoulder and giving me a conspiratorial look. "Will you do it?" "What is it, Your Highness?" "What is it?" What do you ask?" A real prince never asks where or why or whatever. He simply does what the princess asks of him. When I was a princess, before I became a queen, that is, I asked a prince to swim across the lake and fetch me a lily growing on the other bank. And did he get it for you? He drowned halfway across. Let that be a lesson to you. Never agree to do something without knowing what it is. "But I thought you said—" "Never mind what I said. It's what I say that matters." "Oh, all right," I said, fidgeting to be gone. "What is it you want me to do?" "Nothing." Her tiny rosebud lips pouted and she started sullenly at a picture on the wall. Now that my eyes had grown used to the dim light in the room, I noticed that the walls were hung with portraits of stout Rajas and Ranis, turbaned and bedecked in fine clothes. There were also portraits of Queen Victoria and King George V of England, and in the center of all this distinguished company, a large picture of Mickey Mouse. "I'll do it if it isn't too dangerous," I said. "Then listen." She took my hand and drew me towards her. What a tiny hand she had! And whispered, "I want a red rose from the palace garden. But be careful, don't let Dukhi, the gardener, catch you. He will know it's for me. He knows I love roses and he hates me. I'll tell you why one day. But if he catches you, he'll do something terrible." "To me?" "No, to himself. That's much worse, isn't it? He'll tie himself into knots, or lie naked on a bed of thorns, or go on a long fast with nothing to eat but fruit, sweets, and chicken. So you will be careful, won't you?" "Oh, but he doesn't hate you," I cried in protest, remembering the flowers he had sent for her, and looking around I found that I had been sitting on them. "Look, he sent these flowers for your birthday." "Well, if he sent them for my birthday, you can take them back. But if he sent them for me," and she suddenly softened and looked coy, "then I might keep them." "Thank you, my dear. It was a very sweet thought." And she leant forward as though to kiss me. "It's late. I must go," I said in alarm, and turning on my heels, ran out of the room and down the spiral staircase. Father hadn't started lunch, or rather tiffin, as we called it then. He usually waited for me if I was late. I don't suppose he enjoyed eating alone. "And where have you been?" he asked, helping himself to the rice as soon as he saw me come in. "To the top of the old palace," I said. "Did you meet anyone there?" "Yes, I met a tiny lady who told me she was a Rani. She gave me chocolates. As a rule, she doesn't like visitors." "Oh, she didn't mind me. But is she really a queen?" "Well, she is the daughter of a Maharaja. That makes her a princess. She never married. There's a story that she fell in love with a commoner, one of the palace servants, and wanted to marry him. But of course they wouldn't allow that. She became very melancholic and started living all by herself in the old palace. They give her everything she needs, but she doesn't go out or have visitors. Everyone says she is mad." "How do they know?" I asked. "Because she is different from other people, I suppose." "Is that being mad?" "No, not really. I suppose madness is not seeing things as others see them. Is that very bad? No, said father, who for once was finding it very difficult to explain something to me. But people who are like that, people whose minds are so different that they don't think step by step as we do, whose thoughts jump all over the place, such people are very difficult to live with. One afternoon, while father was at school, Aya found a snake in the bathtub. It wasn't early morning, and so the snake couldn't have been a lucky one. I was frightened and ran into the garden calling for help. Duki came running. Aya ordered me to stay outside while they went after the snake. And it was while I was alone in the garden, an unusual circumstance, since Duki was nearly there always, that I remembered the Rani's request. On an impulse, I went to the nearest rose bush and plucked the largest rose, pricking my thumb in the process. And then, without waiting to see what had happened to the snake, it finally escaped. I started up in the steps to the top of the old palace. When I got to the top, I knocked the door of the Rani's room. Getting no reply, I walked along the balcony until I reached another doorway. There were wooden panels around the door, with elephants, camels, and turbaned warriors carved into it. As the door was open, I walked boldly into the room, then stood still in astonishment. The room was filled with strange light. There were windows going right round the room, and each small window pane was made up of different colored glass. The sun came through the one window, flung red and green and purple colors on the figure of little Rani, who stood there with her face pressed to the glass. She spoke to me without turning from the window. This is my favorite room. I have all the colors here. I can see a different world through each pane of glass. Come, join me. And she beckoned to me, her small hand fluttering like a delicate butterfly. I went up to the Rani. She was only a little taller than me, and we were able to share the same window pane. See, it's a red world, she said. The garden below, the palace, and the lake were all tinted red. I watched the Rani's world for a little while and then touched her on the arm and said, I have brought you a rose. She started away from me, and her eyes looked frightened. She would not look at the rose. Oh, why did you bring it? She cried, wringing her hands. He will be arrested now. Who will be arrested? The prince, of course. But I took it, I said. No one saw me. Aya and Dukhi were inside the house catching a snake. Did they catch it? She asked, forgetting about the rose. I don't know. I didn't wait to see. They should follow the snake instead of catching it. It may lead to a treasure. All snakes have treasures to guard. This seemed to confirm that what Aya had been telling me, and I resolved that I would follow the snake next time I met them. Don't you like rose then? I asked. Did you steal it? Yes. Good. Flowers should always be stolen. They are more fragrant then. Because of a man called Hitler, war had been declared in Europe, and Britain was fighting Germany. In an iconic and papers, the Germans were usually shown as blundering idiots, so didn't see how Britain could possibly lose the war, nor why it should concern India, nor why it should be necessary for my father to join up. But I remember him showing me a newspaper headline which said, Bombs fall on Buckingham Palace, King and Queen safe. I expect that had something to do with it. He went to Delhi for an interview with the RAF. I had almost forgotten the Rani in the old palace and was about to pay her a visit when, to my surprise, I found her in the garden. I had risen early that morning and had gone running barefoot over the dew-drenched grass. No one was about, but I startled a flock of parrots and birds rose screeching from a banyan tree and wheeled away to some other corner of the palace grounds. I was just in time to see a mongoose scurrying across the grass with an egg in its mouth. The mongoose must have been raiding the poultry farm at the palace. I was trying to locate the mongoose's hideout and was on all fours in the jungle of tall cosmos plants when I heard the rustle of clothes and turned to find the Rani staring at me. She didn't ask me what I was doing there, but simply said, "I don't think he could have gone in there." "But I saw him go this way," I said. "Nonsense. He didn't live in this part of the garden. He lives in the roots of the banyan tree." "But that's where the snake lives," I said. "You mean the snake who was a prince?" "Well, that's who I am looking for." "A snake who was a prince?" I gaped at the Rani. She made a gesture of impatience with her butterfly hands and said, "Tut, you are only a child. You can't understand. The prince lives in the roots of a banyan tree, but he comes out early every morning. Have you seen him?" "No, but I saw a mongoose." The Rani became frightened. "Oh dear, is there a mongoose in the garden?" "He might kill the prince." "How can a mongoose kill a prince?" I said. "You don't understand, Master Bond. Princes, when they die, are born again as snakes." "All princes?" "No, only those who die before they can marry." "Did your prince die before he could marry you?" "Yes, and he returned to this garden in the form of a beautiful snake." "Well," I said, "I hope it wasn't the snake the water carrier killed last week." "He killed a snake?" The Rani looked horrified. She was quivering all over. "It might have been the prince." "It was a brown snake," I said. "Oh, then it wasn't him." She looked very relieved. "Brown snakes are only ministers and people like that. It has to be a green snake to be a prince." "I haven't seen any green snakes here." "There is one living in the roots of the banyan tree. You won't kill it, will you?" "Not if it's really a prince, and you won't let others kill it." "I'll tell Aya." "Good. You are on my side, but be careful of the gardener. Keep him away from the banyan tree. He's always killing snakes. I don't trust him at all." She came nearer and, leaning forward a little, looked into my eyes. "Blue eyes, I trust them. But don't trust green eyes, and yellow eyes are evil." "I have never seen yellow eyes." "That's because you are pure," she said, and turned away and hurried across the lawn as though she had just remembered a very urgent appointment. The sun was up, slanting through the branches of the banyan tree, and Aya's voice could be heard calling me for breakfast. "Dukhi," I said, when I found him in the garden later that day, "Dukhi, don't kill snake in the banyan tree." "A snake in the banyan tree?" he exclaimed, seizing his nose. "No, no," I said, "I haven't seen it, but the Rani says there is one. She says it was a prince in its former life, and that we shouldn't kill it." "Oh," said Dukhi, smiling to himself, "the Rani says so. All right, you tell her we won't kill it." "Is it true that she was in love with the prince, but that he died before she could marry him?" "Something like that," said Dukhi. "It was a long time ago, before I came here." "My father says it wasn't a prince, but a commoner. Are you a commoner, Dukhi?" "A commoner? What's that, Chota Sahib?" "I'm not sure. Someone very poor, I suppose." "Then I must be a commoner," said Dukhi. "Were you in love with the Rani?" I asked. Dukhi was so startled that he dropped his hose and lost his balance. The first time I had seen him lose his pose while squatting on his haunches. "Don't say such thing, Chota Sahib." "Why not? You will get me into trouble." "There must be. It is true." Dukhi threw up his hands in mock despair and started collecting his implements. It's true," I cried, dancing around him, and then I ran indoor to Aya and said, "Aya, Dukhi was in love with the Rani." Aya gave a shriek of laughter, then looked very serious and put her finger against my lips. Don't say such things, she said. Dukhi is of a very low caste. People won't like it if they hear what you said. And besides, the Rani told you her prince died and turned into a snake. Well, Dukhi hasn't become a snake as yet, has he? True, Dukhi didn't look as though he could be anything but a gardener, but I wasn't satisfied with his denials or with Aya's attempts to still my tongue. Hadn't Dukhi sent a rose to Rani? A few days before we left, I went to say goodbye to the Rani. I'm going away, I said. How lovely, said the Rani. I wish I could go away. Why don't you? They won't let me. They are afraid to let me out of the palace. What are they afraid of, your highness? That I might run away? Run away, far, far away, to the land where the leopards are learning to pray. Gosh, I thought, she is really quite crazy. But then she was silent and started smoking a small hookah. She drew on the hookah, looked at me and asked, Where is your mother? I haven't one. Everyone has a mother. Did yours die? No, she went away. She drew on her hookah again and then said very sweetly, Don't go away. I must, I said, because of the war. What war? Is there a war on? You see, no one tells me anything. It's between us and Hitler, I said. And who is Hitler? He is a German. I knew a German once, Dr. Schneider. He had beautiful hands. Was he an artist? He was a dentist. The Rani got up from his couch and accompanied me on the balcony. When we looked down at the garden, he could see Dukhi weeding a flower bed. Both of us gazed down at him in silence, and I wondered what the Rani could say if I asked her if she had ever been in love with the palace gardener. Aya had told me it would be an insulting question, so I held my peace. But as I walked away slowly down the spiral staircase, the Rani's voice came after me. Thank him, she said. Thank him for the beautiful rose. Dukhi